Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 228th edition of the Frank and Stan chat. And I'm absolutely delighted to have a guest who's been on, I think, three times. I know you were involved, Rebecca Smith, on our 100th edition, but I think it's been two or three times. But anyway, welcome back, Rebecca Smith.
Okay.
How are you this
Thanks,
morning?
Frank. I'm good, thank you. A bit upset now, actually. You waited another 127 editions to call me back,
I
but
don't,
I'll
was it that long ago though? Was it the 100th edition
it's all
the
right.
last time?
Just digging yourself in
Oh
deeper. It's
God.
fine. It's fine.
Oh dear. Rebecca, do you want to just explain how we know each other, who you are, and what you're doing, and then we'll
Yeah.
get into Stan and see what he's been up to.
So I think I meant to say at this stage that you used to be my boss, and
Yeah,
that's how you used to
but,
introduce
but your
yourself.
career went on to better things after that. So
Yeah, so we know each other because I was a head teacher of a school that joined the trust that obviously you were the CEO for, and now I'm a head teacher of an 11 to 18 school in Trafford. Um, yeah,
yeah, and it was a tough. That was a tough school, and I think that's why I felt
Uh,
very sort of reasonably close to you and your career because that was not a school that was easy to turn around, but you did turn it around. So it was an amazing achievement. So
yeah. I always say it was the school that nobody wanted to love because I was on secondment for 12 months. And I fell in love with the school nobody wanted. Always been inadequate.
yeah,
Um, and then it did. I know we don't like necessarily judge things on gradings and etc., but it did get to good. But the beauty of it that was on Valentine's Day. So I always think it's a love story. So
uh,
that's how
uh,
I describe it.
yeah.
But yeah.
Well,
Oh,
Stan's disappeared. I think he's having
oh,
problems with
bored him
his
that much.
signal, but let's carry on anyway. He'll join us in a minute. I mean, I
Okay.
just one of the things though, I still remember very vividly the sort of feedback at that school and how important it was to have somebody who had sort of like a fairly broad understanding of the education provision. I felt as though it was a fair judgment, but it wasn't so much the judgment, it was the sort of like confirmation that what you've been doing had been effective. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't so much the grade, it was more to do with, you know, the fact that somebody recognized, the journey you've been on, so as you say, it wasn't the grading or the report so much, although it's quite nice to get it. It was having somebody who was a sort of fairly experienced and person giving that feedback, I think was quite important. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was quite an emotional session, wasn't it? I remember that
Well,
very
it certainly was for me. I was very emotional, but yeah, it was just amazing for the school community and for them to, actually, yeah, like you say, we were on the right journey, and
yeah.
actually, there's a great school that you can send your children to, and it's still great,
Yeah,
which
I
is
know.
which is the lovely thing that actually, things do take time, don't they, to embed. You can't sort of do things overnight when things are really broken. They take time.
It's funny when
Um,
I left headship, I was at a school in Poynton, and the head teacher who got the job after me, he'd applied for the job initially with me 10 years earlier, but he'd always wanted to be the head of that school. And one of the things that was really good was that the school maintained its sort of like focus, that it continued to be an effective school. And in a way, that for me was well, it felt as though it embedded
not,
some of the things
not
that I was
quite
trying
as
to
good
do.
as when you were there, Frank. That's what you want. Good, but not quite as
No,
good.
probably a lot better, Stan, a lot better. But you do get that buzz, I think, from the fact that it does survive. And it's not all down to you.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Stan, you're back. Nice to see you
Yeah,
back.
sorry about that.
I don't know what's
It's
happening with your
happening with this
yeah,
computer of
yeah.
mine at the moment.
Okay, well, let's kick on. But anyway, Stan, you've been on holiday and things are back with you now. So here we are. So, what's caught your eye this week?
Football transfers, um, particularly the concept of somebody's not performing well at one club, and so we'll transfer them, and another club will buy them in the hope that they suddenly become so much better. Um, And I was thinking, that there are some players who might get better, but there are other players who sort of make a downward spiral then into lower league clubs and lower league clubs, and that's effectively the end of the career. And there's a song in White Christmas that doesn't feel appropriate now, but is what do you do with a general? And it's about, how can you employ a general when there are no wars? And it struck me that one of our issues in teaching at the moment is retention. And yet we've just changed the rules yet again so that a teacher can get up to the very top of their scale very rapidly, 3-4 years. And for a teacher then who doesn't want to go into leadership and management, potentially you've got 40 years of teaching and keeping that enthusiasm and skill. And I know last week when we talked to Pi Corbett, he talked about subject knowledge and passion around the subject knowledge. But I think even that, you can be very passionate about your subject knowledge, but can you do that for 40 years every day? And I just wondered, is that part of why we are losing teachers? Because there's a point where you run out of enthusiasm or your resilience is low, and we don't do the kind of right, we'll do a deal where you can go somewhere else and see if that's better. And I just wondered, and I thought Rebecca might have some ideas, how do we reignite people's passion?
Before she gets in, can I just also add the point that is this an issue that doesn't always hit female staff, but is this something that in a way does affect some female staff on the basis that the challenges of actually having a family and all the responsibilities and some of the burden in some families falls on the female more heavily than in the man. So in effect, does that mean that some men are in a better position to move on than some women who feel, more committed or wedded or whatever the word is to some of those family responsibilities? So I don't want to talk about that because I'm not a female, but I'd be interested in your perspective on that.
There's also the issue, particularly in primary, that if you are male, there's an expectation that you will go into leadership and management. It's kind of part. I hope it's changed significantly since I was a head. It did, I think, between my time as a head and my time finishing as an advisor, because when I first became a head in Lancashire, the first head teachers meeting was just a bunch of grumpy old men. And that changed. So they were, by the time I left, they were grumpy old women. The majority.
Steady, Stan, steady.
But I remember saying to my advisor, because of various things that the authority did that I didn't like. And I said to her, when I joined Lancashire, I was appalled at the grumpy old men that were in it. And now you've turned me into one of them. I am now that grumpy old man who sits at the back and whinges.
So how are you dealing with it then, Rebecca? What's your perspective on this?
So my perspective on it, I suppose it goes back to what I said originally in the thing that, personally, I was given the opportunity to have a secondment, wasn't I, somewhere else? And I know the NLEs are coming to the end now, but I was an SLE as well. So I had the opportunity to do school support, and with multi-academy trusts, obviously a lot of trusts do give the opportunity to move staff around. And obviously I'm not necessarily been in that, and that wasn't the case, but that was one of the things that I had. So I think some of those opportunities, they do exist, and actually they can work. They can work really well. Hopefully, as I prove, because I learned loads from going out and visiting other schools and coming back and thinking how we can improve our own and my own subject area. So I think those sorts of opportunities to work with others and do those things, and you see where schools are working successfully together. You do see individuals sort of working and staying really at the top of their game. I think so. There are those possibilities, really.
Yeah, what is?
You lost me again.
Yeah, I think the issue here is around. I suppose I think that's a really valid point. I'm thinking of my own eldest daughter who moved from a highly performing sort of primary school in Trafford into working in a sort of a more challenging area in Wythenshawe, and actually, I think she's found that was the only move she's had in that in her was she's well, I won't give her age away, but she's been teaching now for about 15 years. But actually, that's rejuvenated her career, and so in a way, and she's brought stuff to the new school from working in a sort of another school that was more highly attaining. It's brought that element of challenge into the new setting, so there is something perhaps around not forced movement of staff, but there is something, isn't there, around in football. Just take back. There is this sort of like you can have somebody on a loan. So a young player might go to another football club for a season and play at a lower division, to get experience. There's probably possibly something in all of this. So I know that the government though tried a scheme, and I think we tried it at your school, where a member of staff from another area could actually was actually given some financial incentive to come and work in a more challenging school. But that actually didn't actually attract many people to that scheme. I think it was only about 15 or 16 actually did it nationally. So there is this thing about, oh, I'm worried about going somewhere else in case it's worse. I might not be great here, but at least I know what I'm dealing with.
I think that happened in my career early on. I was offered a transfer, which you had to be careful of because it could look bad on your career that you were transferred from one school to another. But it was for the opposite reason, actually. It was that the teacher in a church school had become pregnant without being married, and they needed to move her out of the church school, and was seen as someone who would fit in with their philosophy. So, but that helped me because I then landed with a head teacher who was determined that it was time to move on, and so spent time with me, making me better in order to move me on.
So Rebecca, I mean, this must be an issue that we've all faced, but how do you sort of keep that professional development drive going? Is it around the team? Is it feeling a sense of place within it, and feeling committed to, your school doing as well as it can, or are there some specific programs that you perhaps have to adopt in order to excite a teacher you think is really quite capable, but actually for whatever reason is in a bit of a low point in their career?
I think a lot of the ideas about sort of professional development often do depend what stage your school's at, where you are, what your focus is, all those kinds of things. But I would say that, I mean, we've done a range of things here, like other schools, things like research projects to help to inform what your next sort of policy and how you actually implement policy and whether policy and practice can, how close they are, etc. We've done visits to other schools, we've done coaching, all sorts of ideas to sort of help move things on. But I would say I don't know, as a profession and as young people and as life changes, there are lots of different opportunities. And I know that it's that old cliche, no day is the same, but genuinely no day is the same. And,
Mm,
there are so many things that you do need to think about and learn about. And, having that opportunity just to spend time and talk to other people. So I think a lot of it is about how you create that time and those opportunities within the school as well, for people to go, oh yes, I used to really, even if you haven't been doing it for a while, go, oh yeah, I used to really love doing that, or oh, I haven't thought about doing that, I'll do it
mm.
again. So it's that, isn't it? But and schools do that in lots of different ways. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think that I was always moving my career on. I suppose I was always thinking 3 or 4 years, get another school, and that was driven very much by wanting more promotion. To be honest, I think in my first school, which is very close to here where I live, I had probably one of the weakest head teachers leading that school, and it didn't take me long. Not to be arrogant, I think everybody on the staff realised we weren't being well led, and it made me feel as though, well, what is going on here? What is the professional development for this person, this leader? What are they offering me? And when I went to see when I was on that probationary year, able to go and see other schools, often talking to them, they'd be very excited about some event that had happened or something that was going on, and I could never feel that sort of envy or that sense of, you know, somebody wanting the best for me. So I think that's what made me realise that I was in a pretty weak position, and I needed to get out. But I was able to do that through promotion.
I, I think there are some people who provide CPD that is sort of inspiring, and I do think that helps when you go and see an inspirational speaker, and it sort of refires, as Rebecca said before, something you remember that you used to do and has
yes, yeah,
got lost on the way. I know because as a couple, there's in my career, well, late in my career, but Andy Hargreaves was one that I would go and see and come back full of fresh ideas and new thoughts and where to go next. But I'm not sure how many there are and whether they are getting priced out of the market.
yeah. But I
But
wonder.
some of that can just come, can't it, from how you set your own professional development and your
Yeah,
own conversations up. And you
yeah,
know, I mean, we've got some amazing staff here, and you know, sort of the curriculum and the talk and the discussion that they have about it and how they're going to develop it and keep it fresh. And is it relevant to our cohort and the young? I mean, just hearing those discussions it's inspiring. They are interested,
Yeah,
you know, and they want to make it great for young people.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say there are times when I was ahead that I'd go in the staff room and overhear the conversation and come out buzzing that the staff were actually wanting to do things and taking on things and challenging each other about things over a coffee at break time kind of thing. And I found that was always inspirational to me. I'm not sure what it did to them if I wandered in and sat down and had a coffee with them. But yeah, it does give you a buzz when you know that's going on behind the scenes and people are wanting to do what effectively is your philosophy or your aims or and
mm.
it's coming into fruition. I do think that's quite inspiring. I just worry that somebody stuck in let's say the school you were in, Frank, and likely to be there for 20 to 30
Well,
years. And
I mean, I said to our children who are teachers, two of them, you know, for heaven's sake, just move on, you know. But they got themselves into a position where it worked for them. Childcare arrangements worked for them. The distance between where they were living and where they were working, all of these were factors that were making it possible to balance the various demands on their life, you know. And but at the end of the day, I mean, both of them now are looking, or one has moved, and it's an easier journey, and it's been a lot better for her career. I think actually she's found her niche, you know, with those children. She fit, you know, in a way, working, and this is interesting, isn't it, Rebecca? But working in some of the more challenging communities, actually, you get, you know, sometimes your feedback is immediate. You can feel it, you know, and so in a way, I think that's what she's got from her trip into Wythenshawe. But anyway, let's move on. Rebecca, what's caught your eye this week?
So we still get the Sunday paper delivered to the house. So I do spin on a Sunday morning, and when I get back, no one's usually up, if I'm honest. So I sit down, make myself a coffee, and read the paper. And there was an article in there this Sunday, and it was headed "The School That Smashed Pupils' Smartphone Addictions Using a Landline." So it's about a boarding school in Oxford, who basically have put in a landline into the boarding house, so that they can then put in various rules around mobile phone use, so that, you know, if you're in this year to this year, you can't use it on these days. There's some things that made me giggle. I think there's something about you can't use it one year, you can't use it on a Tuesday or a Thursday or something. I was thinking, well, what's wrong with just
What's
something
wrong?
about those days? Anyway, my mind was going, you know, stupid o'clock thinking about those kinds of things. But basically they're trying to limit the amount of time that students have with a smartphone, which I kind of thought, you know, boarding houses would probably do anyway, because we
Yeah,
encourage that ourselves with our parents. But actually they've still got that connection. They've installed the landline, and it took me back because obviously all of us, I'm assuming we went like say, you know, to university or lived,
yes,
but we all did that last century, so we've all got that in common. And I remember, you know, queuing up
Yes.
to use the phone, and there were three in a row, and then there was one, I think it was at the end of like G block, that was actually in a booth, so you felt you could have a bit of a private conversation, but really everybody outside could hear. And it took me back as well. So I got sort of visions of, even when you were at home and you had the phone and you were trying to have a private conversation, everyone knew it rung, and there was always a kind of like at you as they yelled up the stairs, and then you were trying to take the phone, weren't you, and like the wire into the other room so that you could have
Well, some of us had,
bit of a
we've spoken
private
before,
chat.
some of us had a telephone number that was shared with a neighbour.
Party line.
Party lines. So it's before your time, Rebecca. But
well before.
well before your time. But you could, you could pick the phone up wanting to use it in one house, and you could hear the neighbour having a conversation in another.
You had to
and
press a button on the top.
Yeah.
To
But
make
anyway,
it your call.
So I mean, yeah.
Actually, Frank, because I'm older than the Dead Sea Scrolls, when we first used the phone, it was next door's phone.
Right.
We used to go around to next door and use their phone.
Well, when we moved in our current house, the guy across used to have pigeons, so I can only imagine that's probably where that evolved from as well.
So in terms of social media, there's a lot going on, isn't there, around the banning of mobile phones in schools. I mean, I do visit quite a lot of schools still, and I don't see kids walking around with mobile phones, during the day. I mean, that seems to be a fair. Although I have to say, there's a school near to where we live, Rebecca, where I know where they go, where the kids go. I know where they are. I know where they hang out, but I suspect the school does as well. But but this idea that children are roaming around the school, with their phones, having conversations. I mean, I just don't know where all of that comes from. It's sort of like, for me, it's fairly lazy reporting, because that's not what I'm seeing. But it seems to be a good story.
Yeah, but I suppose it is, isn't it, about that, even if we're, I mean, there's the old saying, isn't there, that you don't tell your child to stay away from water. In the swimming pool, you teach them how to swim. That's kind of the thing that was there. And I suppose it's about that appropriateness, isn't it? And, when what a lot of us find is that even though we can put those elements in at school, and we can say, the sanctions, or they're taken off you, or there's these pouches we put them in, or whatever the school may have as their rule, that actually it's, when they're outside those school gates, there still needs that sort of element of control. And I think that's kind of what the boarding sort of school has decided, how they're going to do that. Because if you weren't at boarding house, you probably would go home and have your phone. And I suppose, I mean, I wouldn't want to be a child in 2025, with everything that they've got. But also it's difficult, isn't it, for parents as well to keep track of what we're meant to be vaguely interested or worried about, I suppose, and how you actually do parent with things that really you don't necessarily understand.
No.
So yeah, I was interested in that. The article goes on and talks about how children are now talking to each other and all those things, and joining in more clubs and doing all those things that we want them to do, which we get. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that I thought they would have had a landline anyway, but they're actually, got visions of where these things are now in my head at this boarding house.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think for me it was there was an article, or no, it was on Question Time last week, where a guy was challenging Peter, I think it's one of the ministers, about the fact that, trying to link the fact that there is more use of mobile phones by young people, and the occurrence of young people having accidents outside. So, saying that basically it's bringing people it's allowing people to communicate with their friends, but within their own house, or not having to go outside and meet up. And so, that, and in a way, there is that sort of underlying concern about that. But at the end of the day, it feels to me as though the world of social media is not sufficiently well controlled or managed. So, for example, that even on Frankenstein Chat, we can occasionally, Stan, get somebody just sending us a stupid message, you know, I don't know who the hell they are. It's sort of often a GVSTUV something or other, George or something. You have no idea who this person is. And in a way, it's far too easy to sort of have a world outside which you can create, which hides you from the sort of scrutiny so that you're actually held to account for what you've said online. And to me, it seems that I can't understand why it's not possible for us all to have our own sort of social media world, but we're all identified within it. That you can't create these false people, these bots or whatever, to actually, you know, say ridiculous things about something that you're saying, or to provoke a response about something that you might want to say. I mean, it feels to me as though the control of those big social media companies, whether it's Meta or Twitter or whatever it is, you know, that's the place to go to. You know, and I know that the EU are trying to do that, and that's why there's a lot of pressure on them from those media companies, you know, not to allow that to happen, because actually that would really slow down their growth if everybody who was on social media like an address, you know, in your house, that actually this is where I am, this is who I am, and I'm going to be held to account for the sorts of things I say. At the moment, I can say whatever I like by just creating a false personality online. And I think those are dangerous places for young people, you know. Yeah.
So, just out of interest, Rebecca, what does your school do in terms of making children aware of those issues, those dangers?
Yeah, so we do we do a lot of work with with young people in terms of, you know, social media, and it looks different obviously in each year group. It's just it's part of your PSHE offer, for want of a sort of another way of putting it. And then we have sort of we've got online safety leaders who work with the safeguarding leads. We've got that kind of element, and then we do also do sessions on for parents as well. Just even simple things about, you know, how to put parental controls. We don't obviously we can't say this is step by step how you do it, but just raising awareness of those things. Again, just making sure staff training's up to date. You know, and actually that we've got an awareness of what potentially could be happening, if you know what I mean, and just making sure that parents are also aware of that, I think, as I say, is really important. And dealing with things when they happen, you know, and even if things happen outside of school that come into school, you know, how you actually deal with that, I think, is really important.
One interesting, before we move on, in the borders in Scotland, they introduced an iPad for every child from year 1 to year 13, and that iPad went home with the child. So, but they had gained access through that iPad through the local authorities' secure system. Well, as soon as those iPads went home and parents started to use the iPads,
Yeah,
I tell you, it threw up so many issues.
yeah.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting. You know, so
And it
in
was
effect,
that's what happened in COVID as well.
right?
When devices started going out, if you'd got the right controls on, sometimes you had to have very difficult conversations with a
Yes,
household where you knew it wasn't necessarily the child that was sort of doing something, as it were,
yes, yes,
but maybe the parents were. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Right. My issue this week is timeliness. Right. So we have, when we were going through COVID, this is as if it's all planned this, but as Rebecca mentioned, COVID, as we
Seamless.
went through COVID, the Department for Education regularly sent out revised guidance notes at about 6 o'clock on a Friday evening. Now, this happened not just once, this had it became like a weekly event. And so head teachers were then struggling to interpret all of that information and then get a communication out to staff to make it meaningful for them. But it sort of made me think at the moment about timeliness, because the Keeping Children Safe in Education guidance, revised guidance, has been delayed. So here we are about 3 or 4 weeks before the end of term. Leicestershire schools finish in 2 weeks. And actually, there is very little chance for those Leicestershire schools to get that guidance in such a way that at the time when it's not eating into already a very, very busy August period, with exams and everything. So it made me then think about, well, there's a delay to the Ofsted framework as well. There's the uncertainty around the France's curriculum review and about, well, when's that all coming out? It just sort of made me think there about how all these little, not minor events, are all sort of stacking up to land sometime in the autumn, and how difficult it is to manage that when you don't really know when any of these things are actually going to happen. So they're delayed, but they're not delayed indefinitely. They will happen. But it's actually the timing of all that and how school leaders are able to sort of manage that process. I think is something that more thought needs to go into that, bearing in mind the problems that schools faced around the COVID issue. So my plea would be, if there is a delay, you don't know about that delay just now. You probably knew it was going to happen a couple of weeks before, and actually getting that message out very early and being clear as to when the guidance will be published, or when the document on the curriculum review is coming, or when that Ofsted framework will get published. So actually I think these are all factors that sort of add to the uncertainty around planning for the autumn term. So good timeliness, I think, is probably necessary for effective management, and influences how effective you are seen as a leader and how you manage that process. So that was it for me, timeliness.
I think that's really important, Frank, and when you're, particularly if you're meeting people or as an advisor going into schools, that I'll be there at 9:05 or 9:10, I think is really, really important. And that used to cause me more stress than ever, being the size of Lancashire. You could be travelling 30, 40 miles to a school across a crowded motorway, and you've said, I'll be there at 4:15. And that used to really cause me a lot of stress, especially when you're driving a 1972 MG that's not the most reliable.
Well, there was a little video I saw this morning because there was a fantastic cricket match yesterday between England and India at Headingley. And one of the joys of being not working full time, I can watch some of this much more than I used to. But there was a little clip about how punctual were the England team when they were getting on the coach yesterday morning. And it was really interesting. Some of them, like Ben Duckett, who scored this amazing 149, he was on the coach 10 minutes before the coach was due to leave. But none of them were on the very last minute. There was something was going on in that hotel that said, we want you all to meet at 5 to 9, so we're all on time. And everybody was on time. It just sort of gave, I didn't know that was going on, but it sort of gave a sense of, here's a sort of team that's pretty serious about doing it. This is not a slapdash, get down there about 9 o'clock when you're ready. This felt very, not regimented, but it felt professional and ordered, and with high expectations.
Yeah, well, changing the tone slightly, but I'm meant to be going to see Lana Del Rey on Saturday night. I don't know whether I'm going or not at the moment. I'm not trying to flog the tickets because obviously this isn't that kind of platform. But she's renowned, isn't she? Absolutely notorious for being late. And she didn't finish a set at Glastonbury. And actually, I saw her at because obviously we're just so down with the kids. We went to Primavera Sound, not this year, but I think it was last year, and we saw her. And she was, again, however many, 10, 15, 20 minutes late. Same for Leeds last year. So
wasn't it 2 hours in Glasgow or somewhere? I know there was
Glastonbury. She was a very long period, and she couldn't finish the set. But yeah, she struggled to finish it when we were at Primavera, but she sort of mushed a few songs or whatever together to do it. But yeah, I found myself actually getting more and more agitated that I'd paid for this thing and that I wasn't quite sure why she was so late. But anyway, she's played Cardiff, and I didn't hear that she was too late. Hopeful. But yes,
is that at the Co-op Arena? Is she at the Co-op Arena?
No, she's actually at Anfield in Liverpool, which is why I'm not.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. But anyway.
My only thing, we're going to finish now. I went to Co-op Arena right, for a concert about 2 months ago. We live, Rebecca, probably about 8 miles away. It took me 2.5 hours to get to
to
the
get
arena,
home?
just to get to the arena,
Oh, to get there.
to
Oh,
get there. And then getting out is awful. And so this is the point, isn't it? That you have these great arenas, and the Co Arena looks fantastic. And when you're inside, it's a really nice arena. But there's been no change to the road network around there. So you come out of the Co-op Arena, most of the car parks are coming out onto one road, which is a dual carriageway, but it's a sort of in-town dual carriageway. So you're stuck in a car park for hours trying to get out of these damn places. And there is a metro link, but everybody's trying to use it. So there's thousands of people trying to get on these small little metro link trains. So I'd really it's put me off going to the Co-op Arena again for a big concert, to be honest.
well, last time we went tram in, and then we ended up walking into the city centre to get
Yeah.
a tram back out afterwards because of the congestion around there. But anyway, sorry, that's another.
Well,
But
this is
yeah,
it.
good.
Well,
There are, you can do that from the, you can get the tram, but yeah, like you say, it is busy.
it's busy, yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Rebecca. I'm
Thanks,
sorry it's
Rebecca.
been so long. 128 editions since
Mm.
the last time.
Well,
But
it may be the
Said
same.
with
Who
feeling.
knows?
but thank you for joining us. And
Oh no, thank you. It's been a lovely way to spend the morning.
oh well, thank you. And
And if you're going off to watch more cricket or something, enjoy it.
well, yeah, because I think I was grateful to Rebecca and to
Oh,
Neil,
yeah.
her husband, for providing a hat for me the last time we met at the cricket at Old Trafford. So I was grateful for that. But it's reminding me though, Rebecca, I'd never forget the hat now.
No,
Never
no.
forget that because yeah. Anyway, thank you very much, and we'll see you all this time next week, or at least two of us will. So take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.